Do not, I repeat, do not move to the Boston suburbs until you watch this video and know what some of the biggest downsides are of living here. Now, whether you're looking to move in 9 or 90 days, make sure to reach out to us. We help people move all the time. People send us messages every day about looking to move to this area, and we love to help people narrow down on which specific areas of the Boston suburb they should move to. Now, let's move on to the things that you need to make sure you know about before you move to the Boston suburbs. The first thing I want to talk about is what Massachusetts is known for is the unpredictable weather. New England is known for its unpredictable weather. So make sure you know before you move to the Boston suburbs that you're gonna have all the seasons here. In the summer months, it's gonna be upwards of 90 degrees some days. Other days, it could be a torrential downpour rainstorm where you are back in a light coat again. Spring, I love spring, it's perfect here. On average, we get weather in the 50s and 60s, but we do get a lot of rain here. And then in the winter, be prepared for snow. It hasn't been as much snow as it used to be, but we do get, freezing temperatures most of the winter. You need a remote starter, you need a heavy down coat. It is always cold here. And then in the fall, it is probably one of my favorite areas in the fall. New England weather is just perfect. Light sweater, beautiful leaves changing everywhere. There's definitely a lot of pros, but the cons, again, freezing temperatures and then scalding hot and lots of rain. So just be prepared for all those changes every year. Now, to go along with the weather point, if you are someone who suffers from seasonal allergies, be prepared to have Claritin D all the time. People get really bad allergies around here with the seasons changing. We get a lot of pollen. If you are someone who gets allergies, be prepared to suffer from them. All right, now another thing to talk about, similar to the weather, is the bugs that we get here. New England is famous for mosquitoes. We have a lot of wetness around here, whether it's lakes or rivers, oceans. You can get to anywhere within like an hour of here, but that brings a lot of bugs. And all year long, we get bugs, different bugs. So in the spring, there's not as many. I would say as soon as really the summer hits where it starts to get that kind of mugginess here, just be prepared that in the evenings as the sun sets, you're probably gonna be up against mosquitoes. Now that is gonna be dependent on the area that you're in. Again, if you're living a little bit closer or you're in an area where you're closer to still water, that's gonna be definitely buggier than other areas. Or if you're closer to the ocean with more of a breeze, you won't see it as much either. But bugs are a thing, so be prepared. Now, switching to another subject, the traffic. I know there's traffic everywhere you go. If you're gonna move to the Boston suburbs and you have to travel into the city for work or pleasure or whatever it may be, you're gonna deal with traffic during commuters' hours. If you live in the Boston suburbs, especially in my area of like Acton, Littleton, Westford, it can probably take you about 45 minutes with no traffic to get to the city. But on rush hour traffic days, it can probably take you upwards of an hour and a half to sometimes even like 2 hours to get to the city. It is bumper to bumper traffic sometimes and a lot of stop and go. So be prepared for that. You probably need to make sure that you own a car to live in the Boston suburbs. There's not much public transportation here. There are some train stations, but to even get to the train station, unless you live somewhere close where you could like walk or ride a bike there, you're probably gonna need a car to get almost anywhere you go around here. Another thing to consider that goes along with the whole transportation theme is that a lot of places you go to, you'll have to pay for parking. Now, more in my suburb area, there are more parking lots, there is some street parking, but as you get a little closer to the Boston suburbs, there's always meters for parking. Lots are pretty expensive, and especially as you get into the city, parking is really expensive in the city. I know people who work in the city and they're paying a small fortune to have a parking pass to work there all year long. So make sure you keep that in consideration. That's why a lot of people take the commuter rail, the train into the city for work, because it's just so expensive to park in the city. Now, when it comes to actually living in the suburbs, the availability of sidewalks are pretty slim unless you're really in the downtown center area or you're in some niche neighborhoods. There's not a ton of sidewalks, especially like in the real suburb area, the more rural towns. You'll definitely see more sidewalks as you get closer to the city in some of the suburbs up there, but pretty much anything, going past the Concord area, you're definitely gonna see less sidewalks. That is definitely a complaint that we get a lot, is that the walkability is hard. So that's why a lot of people wanna move to the neighborhoods, because if you have young kids, you wanna ride bikes, you wanna walk your dog, it's definitely highly desirable, and the property values go up as soon as you live in a neighborhood where you could have sidewalks to walk around everywhere. Some Something else to consider when you're moving here is that there is not a ton of options for dining out. Now, I get this a lot of time in my area that there's a lack of diversity in the restaurants. There aren't a ton of great options. There's a lot more chain restaurants than we would like here. So if you are a big foodie, you love going out, there's definitely lesser options for dining out than I would like here. And then when you do want to go out, there tend to be a lot of people trying to go to the same best restaurants around, so you're more often than not going to be looking at a wait time for dinners at your favorite local hotspots. Now, when it also comes to restaurants, if you are someone who is a total night owl and you like to be up late and eat late, you're going to have a really hard time finding a place around here that is actually open past 9 p.m. It is just something that the suburbs do, is they just like to shut everything down like 9. You know, sometimes best case scenario, you're looking at maybe 10 o'clock for a Chinese restaurant or something like that. But there aren't a lot of options for late night dining. So if you are someone who likes to be up late and eat late and go out late, the Boston suburbs may not be the place for you. Something else you definitely want to consider if you're thinking of moving to the Boston suburbs, especially if you're coming from out of state, is the cost of living. Compared to other states, Massachusetts in general is a very expensive state to live in. I would say the average cost of housing in my market area is pushing about $800,000 for a typical, 3-4 bedroom, 2.5 bath, kind of colonial style house. Now, yes, we do have houses that can range, more in the 600s, and you can get condos for like the 200 to 300 mark. But if you are someone who's looking for like a modest size family home, you're going to be looking at spending upwards of $800,000 to $1 million for a decent house around here to live in the Boston suburbs. Now, I will say that that's why we have a lot of people who actually leave the city to move to the suburbs to raise their family, because for the same exact price, they can get a 2-bedroom condo, sometimes even a 1-bedroom condo. They're looking at getting a modest large family house for the same price. So compared to out of state, it's more expensive, but compared to the city, it's less expensive. And lastly, if you are someone who loves the hustle and bustle, you like a lot of background noise, something to consider about the Boston suburbs is it's pretty quiet here. Now, I'd be happy to find you a house that's close to a highway if you really need that background buzzing noise. But for the most part, late night, you'll be listening to a lot of crickets and really not much noise at all. Now, I just want to end this by saying everything I've said here is very subjective. No matter where you live, there's always going to be pros and cons to everything. So I will say I've lived here all my life. I absolutely love it. I can't imagine raising my family anywhere else. And if these things aren't an issue for you, maybe the Boston suburbs is the perfect place for you and your family to live. So thanks again for watching, and make sure if you want to learn more about moving to the Boston suburbs to subscribe to this channel and follow along, and we'll see you at the next one.